Fred MacMurray played the role of a single dad raising three sons in the sitcom that ran from 1960 to 1972 called My Three Sons. It was the predictable humor and situational conflicts that resulted in good-natured and innocent television from that era. It dealt with the typical things that kids and parents might be dealing with in the 1960s. Looking back at any of the produced entertainment from that timeline, it is a strange time machine into an America that was. It has familiarity and connective tissue between then and the United States of today, but there is no mistaking that the image of that America is only a distant cousin of today's country. I'm a fan of the United States. Perhaps it is because I have this residual film of sappy patriotism stuck in my brain from my life and my experience. But no place on this planet has done more good for the liberty of man than that of our republic. Its recent descent into collusion-laden decadence is something that is relatively new in the scope of the life of this country. Make no mistake, there are always retrospective sins that should have and perhaps could have been addressed differently with today's knowledge. But the wonderful truth of the United States is that it has been a beacon of goodness that far outweighs its sins. As I've been writing these essays, I have been attempting to call out the things that I see that are first principle issues, that have been abused and have left me unrequited. I want this great place to work. I want a good government and a healthy populace who has capacity at debate and who will wrestle with hard ideas and uncomfortable comments. In the last few months of writing, I have noticed a significant shift in how the demographics of our country are absorbing the politics of the moment. There is a cyclone of disruption hanging over us, and most of us don't understand the implications. I grew up, as most children do, following in the intellectual footsteps of my parents. I listened to what they had to say and took it as one step short of the Gospels. They described the world from a perspective that made sense and aligned with my real-life experience. They were, and remain, patriotic people who loved the United States. They have voted in line with their party for most of their electoral experiences, and utilized their lives as the justification for their votes. In their time, the biggest issues were taxes and the Cold War. They justified their liking for any individual politicians based upon their interests, and that liking was probably something in line with what their parents had described to them. American politics in the 70s and 80s and 90s was relatively nuanced in differentiation between Republicans and Democrats. It was about steady performance in the same direction. America was the moral winner of the governmental ideas on the planet, so even if there were a difference of opinion between Democrats and Republicans, the constitutional republic was still the best option in government. They believed that the government was not adversarial to them. They might govern differently, but they were never suspicious that the state had it out for the American citizen. As I rewatched a few of the episodes of My Three Sons, it was apparent to me that so much had changed. The characters in the sitcoms and media of the time were still cut from the same belief cloth that my parents are. There was not an existential threat of the shadow government or the cancerous state that ran as a spine through the conversations and situations that those characters, and in turn, the real-life people of America, were facing. The same cannot be said of our day and age. I have 4 sons. We live a relatively comfortable life in Colorado, but their opinions of our country are not in step with the traditional inherited thinking of a parent. They have formulated their own opinions based upon their lived experiences and observations. In this essay, I have interviewed them and put image to their thinking about our country. My sons range in age from 15 to 18 years old and see our America in a light that might be a completely different view of the America we think it is. Our home is somewhat unique. We've homeschooled them for their entire education. We have never had cable. We watch very little traditional television. We like the outdoors, adventure, and the beauty of literature. They have a great deal of skepticism at their core, not just from our training as parents, but because the American experience demands it. Listen to the future of our country that comes from their voices, and you may be compelled to engage in politics in an entirely different way. Our founding fathers and subsequent generations have always held fast to the idea that we need to leave the country in a better place than we found it. The last era of politics has been self-serving, and votes have been driven by fear, revenge, frustration, and self-interest. The voices of these young men tell a different future. The next generation understands that, and dare I say, even calls that insistence upon repentance for her current abusive operations as hope for their future.
The original idea of America is the ability to be free and the ability to, which is a God-given right, an opportunity to be able to express who I am and who I get to be. And I think that that's more important than any government that could ever tell me what to do. Education is one of the things that's really struggling in America, especially. I mean, we've made a lot of technological advances or just even regular advances in the past 150 years. And education, I mean, if you look at a classroom 150 years ago and then you look at a classroom now, they're exactly the same. The format of education is really an issue. It's a very demotivating system. Education is not about learning anymore. It's more about whether you got your check mark. COVID is just, it's a mess of just what not to do. And I think that it's a total injustice that any government should ever be able to tell you exactly, what you're supposed to wear or what you're supposed to do. And I think that that's just wrong. I wouldn't say that that's a proud moment in America. The political system at the moment is really just poor leadership, but also just there's this secret force that just kind of, you can tell, it doesn't feel like no matter what you do, no matter who you vote for politically, you don't feel like you have a voice. And I think the two-party system is really, it's fraudulent in a lot of places, because all it ever does is just cause this divide between people. I think that their responsibilities is to have a common care for the American people. Joe Biden he's funny to me. He kind of just reads his teleprompter and kind of just moves on. And you can easily tell that there's just the puppet masters behind the whole conglomeration, just running the whole system. Trump for me is a little complicated because I like the general idea that Trump's going for. But my problem is Trump doesn't really have any grasp of the principles of the origin of America. A lot of what he does is just being good at controlling the conversation. I mean, as for RFK, I think that he's extremely a powerful voice, especially for these times.
I think it was government testing their powers. They've been trying to push the citizen as far as they can go. We can do this because we've made the laws in order for us to be able to do this. There should have been some sort of citizen pushback to say, well, hang on, you can't put me in my house for 2 weeks. The government has always been a tool and now has become something that is an enslavement of the citizen now. I think Biden and Trump are just shows. I think they're sort of just an entertainment in the political system. I don't think they actually have any merits to be president. But when you have Biden, who in his website has no policies other than he's not Trump, I think it just shows that it's some sort of entertainment from someone. It's not a solution to politics. RFK would probably be one of the better solutions, because I think presidents in general are viewed by their policies. Nobody looks back at presidents and say, well, he was a president of the United States, so he must have been successful. People look back at presidents and ask, well, what was their policies that made them good presidents? I think that he's not afraid to say what his policies are, and that he's not afraid to say that these are things that need to change in America. We've had so much talk and not a lot of actual implementation of policies. I mean, Trump gets into office and basically is told immediately what to do, and he has no control over what has happened. I mean, he literally brings out Fauci and allows Fauci to just do so much damage to our country, allows him to basically run the government for 2 years. I mean, that's the question. People have died for this country. People have laid down their lives in order to protect this country. And I think it would be wrong of us to just let it go completely just for the sake of, well, it's too hard. That would be such an offense to the founding fathers. It would be such an offense to anybody who laid down their lives. That would be just a total violation of what it means to be an American. I think we should try our best to fight this, but when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one party to dissolve the political bands that tie us together, I mean, that's really how it starts. There has to be another declaration of independence at some point. actually communicating with people on how to fix the problem. I think there's a lot of times where we say, yeah, politics, that's an issue, that's our own thing, it's an individual thing. It's subjective. Like, you don't need to talk about your politics with somebody else because you don't want to make the other person feel uncomfortable, which is so backwards because we're trying to run a system. We're employed to make decisions for our country.
What you could live off of, one person could get money for the whole family. Let's say the dad gets money for the whole family, and he could pay for all the bills, the mortgage, everything he needed, groceries, just from one job. Now, you look at what people have to do today. People have, 2-3 jobs. They're juggling stuff constantly. They can barely pay their bills. They can barely afford groceries. The inflation, the constant printing of money, this endless cycle has to stop. My honest opinion is I don't think that there's a lot of hope. There's a few people in politics that shine, but it's not enough. There's not an overwhelming force for good. It's all rotten, crooked people. It isn't even so much of money, but money is how you get power. It's this power-hungry snake that constantly wants to eat everything. It's not a true form of capitalism or freedom or liberty. It's this mushy form of tyranny. There isn't a lot of hope to fix what we have. I think Biden is, he's lost it. There's nothing there. He's mentally not there. As for Trump, I think right now his campaign, he's running on a vengeance spree to take back his kingdom, and it's not in the right spirit for Americans. The only reason he's doing it is because he lost. It doesn't come across as, I'm doing this for you guys, I'm doing this for the people. It comes across as, I'm doing this because I am mad that they stole my election. I think Robert Kennedy gives me some hope in life that I'll be able to afford basic amenities and to live. That there's someone who actually wants to look out for me and the little guy. Taxation doesn't have a lot of merit to me in my world because all we do is we tax, but it doesn't fix the local road. It doesn't fix the local bridge. All it does is it goes to them so they can build on their little side projects, or it doesn't even go to pay off debt. It doesn't go back to the American people. And if you don't shrink the amount of money they have, they don't spend it wisely. What the government does with printing money is they print endless amounts, but they don't spend it towards anything that matters even. They don't even know what to spend it on. When you have trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars and you don't even know what you want, that's a very dangerous habit to start making more money, trashing your economy. The printing of money absolutely destroys everybody. There's no one left if you print trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. You just pump it through the machine. There's literally nothing left.
The problem with bureaucrats, it's an appointment of being just a king. And when you have that system, now instead of having a king 50 miles away, you now have 70 kings. That system only promotes one thing, and that is selective ideas. Only people that think like them are allowed into the system. If you don't think like them, you're pretty much shunned or you're kicked out. It's disappointing. I don't think it's an angry issue like, oh, they only picked these. It's more of an issue of, that's what we're going with. Like, that's why we could not find anyone better out of millions of people that live here. From 35 to 80, we couldn't pick anyone else. I don't think it's a time to give up. I think it's to strive for something better.
But if there was one thing that President Kennedy stood for that touched the most profound feeling of young people around the world, It was the belief that idealism, high aspirations, and deep convictions are not incompatible with the most practical and efficient of programs, that there is no basic inconsistency between ideals and realistic possibilities, no separation between the deepest desires of heart and of mind and the rational application of human effort to human problems. It is not hard-headed to solve problems and take an action guided by ultimate moral aims and values, although we all know some who claim that it is so. In my judgment, it is thoughtless folly, for it ignores the realities of human faith and of passion and of belief, forces ultimately more powerful than all of the calculations of our economists or of our generals. Of course, to adhere to standards, to idealism, to vision, in the face of immediate dangers, takes great courage and takes self-confidence. But we also know that only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly. It is this new idealism, which is also, I believe, the common heritage of a generation, which has learned that while efficiency can lead to the camps at Auschwitz or the streets of Budapest, only the ideals of humanity and love can climb the hills of the Acropolis.